Hi everyone, thanks very much for joining us for today's webinar. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. My name's Nell Thompson and I'm the Secretary of the Australian Institute of Animal Management, and I'll be hosting and delivering the webinar for you today. I've been on the AIM committee since 2013 and I'm also the coordinator of the National Getting to Zero program. The Australian Institute of Animal Management, or as we call it AIM, is the national peak body representing local government animal management officers. The AIM committee consists of a wide range of professionals engaged in the various aspects of animal management. AIM seeks to support those engaged in the business of animal management and the function itself by providing training and information, opportunities for networking and collaboration, and by encouraging the use of best practice policy and practices. AIM understands the significant pressures placed on local government and the related sector service providers when working in the companion animal management space. We welcome new members, and people can join us via the website at www.aim.org.au. So to the presentation for today. There'll be around 50 minutes of presentation and around 10 minutes of question time once the presentation is concluded. And the recording of this webinar will be accessible via our website to all members to watch at any time. We're going to ask that everyone mutes themselves during the presentation, and if you have questions, you can start putting them in the Q&A section, and we'll get through as many as we can at the end of the session. Can I ask somebody just to please pop a chat in the chat box? I'm just wanting to make sure that that is working. If you have quick questions that relate to your understanding of the content, thank you very much, Vicky, I got that. Put your hand up and we're happy to answer them during the presentation. And if you have more questions or we don't get to yours during the question time, you can send a message to our Facebook page and we'll get to it that way. As always, please excuse any working from home background noises that may filter through. I know that our speaker has got some council tree works going on outside her window and my dog's just decided to start barking, so situation normal. I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Gemma Ma as our presenter today. Gemma is an RSPCA veterinarian with over 10 years experience working in shelter medicine and general veterinary practice. During this time, she's worked extensively on RSPCA New South Wales access to vet care programs across New South Wales. Gemma graduated with a PhD from the University of Sydney School of Veterinary Science in 2020. Her thesis investigated the role of companion animals in human and environmental health. She's currently project manager on Keeping Cats Safe at Home, a 4-year human behaviour change project assisted by the New South Wales Government through its Environmental Trust. The project aims to reduce wildlife impacts on domestic cats by encouraging cat owners to prevent their cats from roaming, and is working in partnership with 11 New South Wales councils. Gemma is going to be presenting on that program today, so let's get started. Thanks, Gemma.
Thanks, Nell. I think they've finished chopping the tree down, but hopefully it won't be too disruptive. So I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians wherever we are joining from today. I'm on Wongal country in Sydney, and also pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So as Nell mentioned, I am the project manager on Keeping Cats Safe at Home at RSPCA New South Wales, and I'm also an RSPCA vet, which I've been doing for a long time now. I wanted to start off by telling everyone a bit about the why we're doing this project. And for me, that relates to my work in the RSPCA treatment room. So at RSPCA, we take in over 13,000 cats every year. Most of those are strays and owner surrenders. And all those sick and injured cats come through our RSPCA treatment room where they're checked over by a vet. I spent a lot of Sunday evenings working in the treatment room while my kids were little. And often we'd get a whole truckload of unsocialized cats in traps dropped off right on closing time, and I'd have to sort through and try and figure out which ones were socialized, which ones we could keep, which ones needed to be put to sleep straight away. We'd also, every spring and summer, we get just boxes and boxes of litters of kittens that are cold and wet and sick and crying for their mums, and it'd be the vet's job to sort through and decide which ones are big enough, which ones are healthy enough, which ones were friendly enough to send out to foster carers. And at RSPCA New South Wales, we've got literally an army of foster carers. Every summer, we've usually got 500 kittens out with foster carers at any one time, but we never have enough foster carers. So it's always falls onto the vet to make those really hard decisions about which ones we get to save. So that's why I'm doing it, because I want to make a difference for cats in New South Wales. So cats, they make up more than 75% of our whole shelter intake. Our dog intake has steadily gone down over the years. Cat intake has remained stubbornly quite high. So that's 50% of our entire shelter intake are kittens under 6 months of age. It's huge. This pie chart on the right shows our cat intake by the type. So the grey segment are our stray cats coming in. We're not an impound facility. We don't run councils in most areas. So these are strays that are sick or injured, and the red segment are the owner surrenders. So I think it's useful here to talk about definitions of cats. So our project, Keeping Cats Safe at Home, is all about domestic cats. They're very different to feral cats in the sense that feral cats are unowned, unsocialized, and have absolutely no relationship to humans. So these are cats that are living as wild animals in the bush, have nothing to do with people. Domestic cats, on the other hand, have some sort of relationship with people. So we obviously have owned pet cats, but they're also semi-owned cats that have some sort of relationship with people. It's quite interesting when we look at these cats. They can have a similar level of care. They can have similar relationships with people in terms of having meaningful relationships, being quite friendly even, but the big difference is how the people see the cats and their relationship. So semi-owners don't believe they are the owner of the cat. If you ask a semi-owner, do you have any cats? They'd say no. If you ask them, what's this cat that you've been feeding for the last 6 months? They'll say, oh, that's just a stray. And unowned cats are another step further removed from people. They're indirectly dependent on humans. So they'll often have casual or temporary interactions with humans. We often see these around dumpsters, around restaurants, wherever there's a free food source that the cats can get some food. So it's really important to recognise that if we catch a cat in a trap, it's impossible to tell the difference between these cats. So biologically, they're identical. There's a lot of movement of cats between groups as well. So a feral cat can become an unowned domestic cat, which can become semi-owned, which can become owned, and they can go in the other direction as well. And also important to note, any of these cats exist on a degree of a spectrum of socialization. So an owned cat can be completely unsocialized in the sense that you can't necessarily pick it up, whereas an unowned cat can be very friendly. So these categories don't tell us about how socialized the cat is. They just tell us about their relationship with people. The reason why these categories are really helpful is because the approaches to managing these different populations can be quite different. So the Threatened Species Recovery Hub did some research to estimate the size of the cat populations in Australia, which I think is quite interesting. So they estimated there's about 3.8 million owned pet cats in Australia. There's about 2.1 million feral cats, and there's about 700,000 maybe semi-owned and unowned stray cats. That might seem like a small proportion of the total population, but it's a really important one when we're talking about cat population management. So these are semi-owned and unowned cats living in highly modified environments, so around people in urban areas, for example, or wherever people are living. They base this estimate on population densities of between 0.8 cats to 32 cats per square kilometre, and on mean colony sizes, so the number of cats together in each site of about 26 cats. The reason they're so important, obviously they contribute to our shelter and pound intakes, these semi-owned and unowned stray cats, but they also have a huge influence on the size and the characteristics of the owned pet population. And they also feed that feral cat population as well, and are fed by the feral cat population. So there's this bridge, they form this bridge between owned and feral cats as well. Why do we have stray cats? We used to have lots of stray dogs too, but we don't anymore. Why is that? So we have really different social norms around cats. Still quite normal for cats to roam away from their home. It's normal to see a cat in the street, even a stray, unowned one. I think that relates a lot to the legislation. So particularly in New South Wales, requirements under the Companion Animals Act mean that cats are only prohibited in a couple of very specific scenarios. So cats are prohibited from food prep and consumption areas, and they're prohibited in wildlife protection areas, but there's no offence for allowing a cat to stray away from home. And there's actually, in our legislation, there's only a very specific instance where the councils can legally seize a cat, and that's to protect a person or animal from injury or death. Which means a lot of councils don't do anything with cats. They'll say the legislation doesn't require us to, which kind of leaves stray and unowned, semi-owned cats as no one's real responsibility. Which means we end up with these unowned and semi-owned populations of cats, which leads to many cats being passively acquired, and which is associated with this overall low willingness to pay for cats. So where people are quite motivated and willing to pay money to look after their pet dogs, when you passively acquire a cat that you didn't necessarily really want, your willingness to pay money to get that cat desexed, to get it vaccinated, to get it registered is quite low. We definitely see this play out in our outreach work, where people might be willing to pay $10 or $20 to vaccinate their dogs, but will not engage at all unless the services are free when it's for cats. We also know that this is a socioeconomic issue. So stray, semi-owned, unowned cats are associated with socioeconomic disadvantage. Having unowned cats on your property, feeding unowned cats, surrendering multiple times are all associated with socioeconomic disadvantage. And we see this with our shelters. So we have a shelter in Yagoona in southwest Sydney. It's quite a low socioeconomic area. If we map our intake of cats and look at the intake of cats per population, the highest areas of intake are also the lowest socioeconomic suburbs. Which leads us to this really, I think, quite alarming fact. So this is from the Animal Medicines Australia 2021 report, Pets in the Pandemic, which looks at our overall pet ownership in Australia. And that shows us that about half of the pet cats in Australia, half of all of our pet cats were passively acquired. When I say passively acquired, I mean people who didn't necessarily want to get a pet cat, didn't plan to be a cat owner, but who've ended up with a cat anyway. So I have 2 passively acquired cats that I've accidentally acquired through working at the RSPCA, because the alternative was they were going to be put to sleep. Most of you in the audience probably have a story of passively acquiring your own cats, or would know someone who has. It's really common. It's part of our culture in Australia that cats are passively acquired. So this is some more background about our study and why we need to keep cats safe. So I've been a vet for 10 years. I've been seeing private cat patients for a long time. I've definitely seen trauma come up time and time again with cats coming into the clinic. But these statistics really surprised and horrified me. So trauma, it's a leading cause of death in pet cats. If we look at the average life expectancy for a cat that has outdoor access, it's only about 4.5 years, just because of all the misadventure that can happen, especially for young cats. So especially being hit by a car. The peak incidence for being hit by a car in cats happens between about 6 months and 2 years. So there's a lot of cats out there that don't even survive well into adulthood. That's compared to an indoor-only cat who will live on average for 15 years. There was a big questionnaire survey that was done of cat owners in Australia recently, that showed that 2 in 3 cat owners have lost a cat to a roaming related accident, and half of these were to being hit by a car. And then when we look at the statistics for cats that have been hit by a car, and we certainly treat many, many cats that are hit by a car in our RSPCA vet clinics, that's only the tip of the iceberg. Less than 30% of cats who are hit by a car will survive their injuries. And council rangers probably see this a lot, picking up the bodies off the street. I've put photos of Jacinda Ardern here because she's a great example. She had a cat called Paddles, who was a rescue cat. He was a bit of a social media sensation because he was a polydactyl cat. He had extra toes, and he was hit by a car when he was 1 year old out the front of their Prime Minister residence. Lots of cats get lost too. And unfortunately, because a lot of cats who roam away from home, it's not unusual for them to go missing for a few days. So when cats go missing, their families won't always think to go and look for them. So that same survey showed that 1 in 4 cat owners have lost a cat at some point. The cat just never came home. And we know from our RSPCA statistics that less than 10% of lost cats are reclaimed by their owners. So lots of cats that are lost end up in shelters and pounds, or just never come home. So cats also do have a fairly significant wildlife impact. So most cats do hunt if given the opportunity. It's part of their normal behaviour. Hunting behaviour is very instinctual, and part of being a cat, they get a lot of pleasure from that hunting behaviour. So the Threatened Species Recovery Hub did this research to try and estimate the total wildlife impact. They calculated that on average, a pet cat kills 186 mammals, birds and reptiles in a year, which includes 115 native species. So when we look at an individual cat, a feral cat out in the bush will kill more wildlife each year because they have to eat to survive. A pet cat's just doing it for fun. They're not necessarily hungry, so they're not going to kill as many animals. But when we tally up the actual impact per square kilometre, the impact of domestic pet cats is much greater just because they live at such great density in our suburbs and in our urban areas. So they calculated the impact of domestic cats versus feral cats was about 28 to 50 times higher. These are the spots of species they go for. So little mammals under a certain weight. So those are the ones they'll be predating at night. But during the day, they're going for birds and reptiles. We're fortunate with this project to be able to do some research. We've partnered with Dr. Brooke Kennedy from the University of New England to do some ecology research to try and better understand these impacts, especially relating to domestic cats. So earlier this year, at the beginning of the year, we deployed 200 heat and motion detection camera traps across 4 local government areas that are included in our project. So this is a map of where we've set out cameras in Byron Shire and Tweed Shire on the north coast. So we put all these cameras on private properties, people's front yards and backyards. We want to get an idea of what cats are getting up to, cats' activity, and also to see how cat activity relates to wildlife activity. Those cameras are out for about 8 weeks, so we've ended up with over 11,000 trap nights worth of data, and that data is currently being analysed. It'll be really interesting to see what we find. I've got some pictures of what we've found so far. This is from Byron. It's a goanna. It's a kangaroo, possum, a couple more possums. It's a bandicoot, which is a common prey item for cats. We've also busted some cats doing some naughty things. So often people associate cats' wildlife impact as being something that happens at night, and might think that keeping a cat inside overnight is how you can stop them predating wildlife. But in fact, while they will kill mammals overnight, and it looks like this one's caught maybe a ring-tail possum, they will shift their predatory behaviour to daylight hours if they're kept in overnight. So this is a cat we've caught chasing a brush turkey. This is my favourite image, which took me a little while to figure out what was going on the first time I saw it, but this is a black cat that's leaping into the air and has grabbed a magpie lark. We've also been able to do some really interesting and informative social science research as well through the project. So we've done that with Dr. Lynette McLeod. We did an online survey that received over 8,500 responses. We also did a random phone survey as well of cat owners that we got over 500 responses to that, and we did over 60 stakeholder interviews to understand the barriers and the drivers for cat owners around keeping their cats contained, to understand what influences those decisions and how we might be able to influence those decisions in the future through our project. So this is what we found. So more than 80% of cat owners were women, and most of those cat owners are partnered and living in detached homes. Most cat owners just have 1 or 2 cats. 97% of them are desexed cats. But when we looked at the data, this is for cat owners and non-cat owners, about 5 to 20% of people are caring for stray cats. And this is a percentage that varies considerably between different areas. So higher socioeconomic areas with less stray cats around, it's very low. Lower socioeconomic areas where we know there are a lot of stray cats, that percentage was up to 20%. When we asked about current cat containment behaviours, we found actually that about 60% of people are already fully containing their cats, which was surprising and reassuring. When we look at research over the years on cat containment in New South Wales, we found that has increased quite substantially. Research from about 20 years ago showed that containment was at around 10%. Research about 10 years ago was at about 30%, and now we're up to 50, 60%. The remainder of people are split between people who are using a night curfew to contain their cats and people who are allowing their cats free choice. We also asked people about their reasons for preventing roaming. So the people who are keeping their cats contained, why they do this. And the main reasons are to protect wildlife. So the people who care about wildlife are already more motivated to keep their cats contained and are already doing that. People are also really worried about keeping their cats safe as well. So we also asked about the reasons why the people who do allow their cats to roam, what the reasons are for doing that. And this is really information to inform, really useful information to inform our campaign. So trying to challenge these ideas or trying to provide some solutions to overcome these sorts of barriers. So common reasons are that people don't believe their cats don't roam very far. The cats want to be outside. Owners might believe their cat is not a hunter. This is really interesting because when we interviewed cat owners, this belief that the cat is not a hunter or that they're not having an important wildlife impact is often despite of very clear evidence to the contrary that they'll present themselves. So a cat owner might say, oh yeah, he brings in snakes every now and then, or I saw him kill a blue tongue. But then later on, they'll say that the cat doesn't have an important wildlife impact. It's really interesting. Cats also used to control pests, and sometimes they're destructive or they're noisy when they're inside. What we did find that was quite interesting and reassuring was that most owners were confident that they could prevent roaming of their cat if they wanted to. Most also disagreed that their living circumstances made it difficult to prevent roaming. And that this decision, the decision around whether to contain or not to contain their cats, was very influenced by family members and by vets. So we thought there might be some more structural barriers that are stopping people from containing their cats, but actually, in reality, the main barriers are the information. So knowing how to do it effectively, knowing that it's advantageous for their cats, and maybe having a bit of peer pressure. So that same study out of the Australian Cat Owner Survey asked people about where they get information about cat care and who they trust for advice on their cats. We found 80% of cat owners trust their vets when it comes to advice about their cat care and management, followed by Google searches and RSPCA. So this is really useful in informing our campaign and the best channels to reach cat owners. So that brings us to our project and what we're actually doing. So keeping cats safe at home. It's a 4-year human behaviour change project. We're trying to encourage cat owners to keep their cats contained to their property, prevent them from roaming, and also to engage with all the other aspects of responsible cat ownership as well. So it's been assisted by the New South Wales Government through its Environmental Trust. And the big overall aim is to reduce the wildlife impacts caused by domestic cats. Based on all our research and talking to experts, we've broadened these objectives a bit more. We want to increase the value of cats. We want to challenge this notion that it's okay for stray cats to be living on the street with no one to take care of them. We also want to improve access to desexing, microchipping and registration. So people who are caring for stray cats, remove the barriers for them to take on ownership of those cats and trying to encourage them to do so. And we also want to not just contain cats, but make sure cats have safe and happy lives at home. So we want to equip cat owners not just to keep their cats contained, but to make sure their lives are very enriched and happy. We've partnered with 11 councils on the project, which is really exciting. They're councils from all over the state, and they're quite diverse. So we're getting an opportunity to try out different approaches to meet the specific needs of different communities. So we've got a few councils right up on the north coast. We've got Walgettshire out in northwest New South Wales, a very remote council with real limited access to services. We've got Wetton out in western New South Wales as well, the Blue Mountains, Shoalhaven on the south coast, and then we've got some councils right in Sydney as well. So very diverse councils with different cat challenges, different environments, and different populations. We've identified 4 quite separate target audience segments for our campaign that all have a slightly different approach to getting information to them. So the first one, probably the biggest group and the most important one, are our animal lover, Larissa. So Larissa loves her cats. She believes she's doing the right thing by her cats. She thinks of them as part of the family. So they get everything they need. They go to the vet when they need to. They're desexed and everything. But these are cats that still roam. So what do we want animal lover Larissa to understand? The cats can have happy and safe lives at home. The cats live longer when they're kept safe at home. We want to really emphasize the risks of roaming. So the cats that roam are at risk of accidents and injury, as well as catching infectious diseases. We want Larissa to understand that it is doable to keep your cat at home, and it doesn't have to be expensive. It's not necessarily going to be as hard as they might think it is. And if they do encounter difficulties, that these difficulties can often be overcome. We also want to emphasize that many cat owners, including their family and friends and neighbours, are already keeping their cats safe at home, and that it is possible to make the transition from free roaming to being safe at home. We're also going to use that influence that keeping your cat safe at home is what your vet recommends, and it's what RSPCA recommends. Very similar is our proud parent, Penny. So Penny has just proudly adopted a kitten from RSPCA New South Wales, or anywhere else really. So we know that people who are actively acquiring cats are often highly motivated to keep their cats safe, and often already intend to keep their cats fully contained. We know that this is an audience who's receptive to information, and that they're really keen to do this successfully. But we also know from research that that intention to keep your cat fully contained doesn't always translate into to being successful with that and to doing it in the long term. So we really want to set these people, these new adopters, we want to set Penny up for success. So messaging is very similar for Penny, with the addition that when adopting a new cat or bringing a new cat or kitten home, it's a perfect time to acclimatise them to the safe at home lifestyle. The big difference with this audience is the channel that we're reaching the audience. So we're going to be doing that through rehoming organisations, through our adoption packs, and working with other rehoming organisations as well. The next 2 audience segments are quite different, and our approach is very different for them. So the first one's cat owner Olivia. So Olivia lives in regional New South Wales. She has several cats. She feeds them, she likes having them around. but she doesn't necessarily worry if they go missing for a few days. The cats are mainly there to control pests around her home, mice, rabbits, rats. So Olivia, she loves the cats, but she has a lot of other things to worry about. She's got a lot of barriers to accessing services for the cats. So while she might prefer that the cats were desexed and doesn't like to have to deal with the kittens every season, cost is a big barrier. Also, the cats are hard to catch. She doesn't necessarily have transport to get the cats to the vet, and the vet can be a long way away as well. So the things we want, the main messages for Olivia are that every cat deserves a safe and permanent home, that desexing your cat is the most important way to care for your cat and also to protect wildlife. So often in this situation with cats on rural properties, people are not necessarily aware that the cats are having an impact. This is probably where cats have the greatest wildlife impact because they're contributing to the feral cat population, they're roaming the longest distances, and they're right up against important wildlife populations. So we also want to emphasise that these cats that roam are at risk of accidents and injury, catching diseases, and that you can keep these cats contained as well, even if they're living on a property. You could keep them contained in a smaller space. This is the really important one when it comes to controlling those or managing those semi-owned and unowned populations. The semi-owner Shelley, this is the big one for our shelter intakes, for example. So Shelley lives in an apartment and English is her second language. Shelley isn't aware of the needs of a cat. She's never had a pet before, but she feeds a colony of cats downstairs by the garbage bins at her apartment complex. So Shelley really cares about these cats. She's a really kind and compassionate person, but they're not her cats, they're strays. She knows them well, she enjoys spending time with them. She hates to see them suffer and she wishes they had easier lives. So this is a really important target audience. The main barrier here is that Shelley doesn't see herself as the owner of the cats. So what do we want Shelley to understand? That desexing is one of the most important ways to care for your cats, but also the community and for wildlife. Also that all cats deserve a home and someone to care for them and keep them safe. We also want to get the message out that it takes a whole community working together to ensure that all these stray cats find safe homes for the rest of their lives. And that really big call to action that you can contribute by helping to get these cats desexed and committing to their ongoing care. Or if you can't do that, if you can't commit to looking after these cats, to contact a council or a rescue group in your area to find them another home. So just to sum up, this is our behaviour change strategy. We've got our two cat owning audience segments, Larissa and Penny, who we want to increase awareness of roaming risks, increase knowledge about what cats need. We want to encourage them to decrease the amount their cats roam. And we're going to do that by providing quality information, by a social marketing campaign, trying to get the message through the channels that these audiences are going to listen to, so especially through vets, through our RSPCA channels, and also providing some incentives to try and encourage people to take that step. Whereas Olivia and Shelley, very different approach. We want to increase awareness of cat welfare and those environmental impacts. We want to improve accessibility of services. We want to increase uptake of desexing. And we're doing that through targeted free desexing programs. Which brings us to our actual project and what we've done. So we've created a web page, which is linked to our RSPCA New South Wales page. I encourage you to check it out. It's got lots of information on there. You can also sign up to our email newsletter, the Catch Up, for regular updates and information on how to keep your cat safe at home. On the website, you can download our series of information handouts. These are targeted for cat owners and cover a range of topics, basically giving cat owners all the information they need to be successful. So we've developed these with Dr. Findy Wills, who's a behaviour vet who works with us at RSPCA New South Wales, and they're really fantastic resources. I'd encourage anyone with a cat to check these out. So they cover things like how to keep your cat safe at home, the different options for preventing your cat from roaming away from your property, Obviously, cats are great athletes, and it's not always easy to restrict them. We've also got some information on how to make that transition. If you've got a cat that roams, how to set yourself up to be successful to make that transition to keeping them safe at home. We've also covered the basics of what cats need, covered some enrichment information to make sure cats have really great and fulfilled lives at home, where they're getting all their needs met, especially that need for predatory play. And if they're not going to be outside catching lizards and things, how you can meet that behavioural need. Also how to settle in a new cat, introducing cats to existing cats, and this last resource that we've just made of what to do if you find a cat. I'll also mention that we're expanding this series. We'll be adding extra resources to this series. So if you have ideas for resources you'd like to see, please let us know. So our most important channel for reaching cat owners, especially Larissa, are their local vets. We know they've got a trusted relationship with their vets. So what we're trying to do is encourage vets to have those conversations with cat owners and trying to give the vets all the resources they need to facilitate those conversations. So we're sending out packages to vets in our project areas that include posters, brochures and flyers, those handouts that they can give to cat owners in consults, these door signs, trying to equip them to have those conversations. We've also been very active on social media. So we had a Long Live the Cat campaign a couple of months ago that was had a great reach, got the conversation started. We're about to do the next installment of our social media campaign with our kitten season campaign in November. So keep an eye out for that one. And the thing that I'm most excited about with this program are our desexing programs. So we're doing these, working very closely with the local councils on our project. We've got 8 of these desexing programs up and running already in different areas. And I'll show you a few examples of how we're doing it, because it's something, an approach that can be tailored to lots of different situations, but seems to be an effective way of managing those semi-owned and unowned cat populations, trying to target those strays. So doing free desexing with a high intensity targeted model. So we piloted this model at RSPCA New South Wales in our the suburb or the local government area where our Sydney shelter is in Canterbury Bankstown. This was piloted by our outreach team starting a couple of years ago. We aim to desex 30 cats per 1,000 people in the population. That's what we mean by high intensity. And we target our programs for an area based on that population and the number of cats we can afford to desex. When we say targeted, we're using a hotspot approach to try and target the promotion in areas where the stray cats come from. So in the instance of Canterbury Bankstown, we actually based that targeting on our shelter intake. So we looked at the locations found for stray cats and kittens arriving at our RSPCA shelter, and we went and promoted in those areas. We picked the top 3 suburbs based on our intake. So we ranked the suburbs based on intake per population to find where the most cats were coming from. Not just the most number of cats, but the number of cats per population. And we picked the top 3 suburbs to start off on. Then once we'd picked the streets where the cats were coming from, our outreach team actually went out there and door knocked and letterbox dropped in those areas to engage with cat carers directly. The important thing to make these programs successful is engaging with all of the local stakeholders, or as many as you can. So local community centres, schools, local businesses, human services, and also making sure you're getting the message out in a language that's going to be accessible. So in the case of Greenacre and Canterbury Bankstown, we promoted in Arabic as well as English. And this is what I mean when I say we're micro-targeting. So print out a map of the suburb. We literally draw on the map where the cats and kittens come from. We also work with the council to get their nuisance complaints. So if they know about feeders or hoarders in the area, we can look at those areas as well. And because this was in the middle of COVID, we weren't actually able to do that much community engagement. The outreach team actually only ended up getting out on the streets, I think, twice in 12 months, but that was enough to get the word out and to find the cats that we were after. So that first year, they desexed 163 cats, which was only 6.4 cats per 1,000 population. So actually quite a low intervention intensity. Importantly, only 50% of those cats were linked to people on benefits. So often when we're doing outreach or access to services programs, people will need to qualify to be involved. So for example, having a pension or a healthcare card. But for this one, it was free for everybody. And 50% of those cats were people who didn't qualify for those sorts of benefits. In that first year, we saw our shelter intake from the target suburbs decrease by 31%. And in that same period of time, our overall shelter intake actually increased by 7%. So we're pretty sure that that decrease was attributable to our program. And it saved us over $1,000 in sheltering costs as well. When we looked at our stats for the following year, so this program continued for a second year, and we've continued to see a decrease in our shelter intake, which is really encouraging. And I'll just tell you about a couple of people that we found through this project. So the first time our outreach team went out on the streets, they found one lady who was feeding a whole bunch of cats out of her house, probably had about 40 cats or something. They found it because there were food bowls out in the alleyway behind the house. It took a little while for them to gain the trust of this lady and for her to actually talk to them. But once she realized that they weren't trying to hurt the cats and that they were trying to help them, that the cats were going to come back again, she was really keen to take them up on the free desexing and microchipping. So what I also found that people were actually coming from surrounding suburbs, even like not even neighbours, to feed the cats in that area. It was become a bit of an attraction. So people would bring their kids and they'd feed the cats in the alleyway. What we're discovering through doing our Keeping Cats Safe at Home desexing programs is the importance of the council rangers and how a engaged and committed council ranger can really be the difference between a program being a success and it not really being very targeted. So the reason why council rangers can be so helpful is that they're really great at identifying the hotspots. They're often very familiar with their community and already know where the issues are with the cats, with the stray cats. They're really well positioned to engage with cat carers, so engage with the people feeding stray cats to get them on board. They're often trained and equipped to assist with trapping and transporting of cats. They're often in a position to offer rehoming and surrender options where there are people who can't continue to care for stray cats. And they're a great person to be the contact point for the community. So the programs where we've had council rangers leading the programs, for example, Paul Flint here from Walgett and Alison Knowles in Wetton, these have been really successful programs that have been very targeted. So Wetton is a great example of how this can work in a regional area. So Wetton is in Western New South Wales or Central New South Wales. It's only got a population of about 3,500 people in an area of 3,500 square kilometres, so very low population density. It's quite a low socioeconomic area, so cost is a big issue for people accessing veterinary services. They also don't even have a vet in their local government area. People have to travel over an hour to get to the nearest vet hospital, or the vet comes out one day a week to do a clinic in their branch practice. This council is a council that rarely impounds cats. So they've usually impounded 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 cats in a year. So Wetton Shire, Alison Knowles has driven the program in Wetton, and they've just celebrated desexing their 100th cat, which they've done in just a couple of months working with their local vet. So it's really interesting in Wetton. It's a good example of where that stray cat population overlaps with the feral population. So Carragable is one of the tiny towns in Wetton Shire. It's only got about 180 people living in Carragable in 83 dwellings. But this is an area that had 3 multi-cat sites. So these are cats that have just wandered in from the bush. So one gentleman who lives in this area had 15 cats that he was caring from that all started from one cat that just wandered in off the paddock next door, and quickly turned into a fairly large multi-cat site. So Alison has worked with this guy to get every single one of those cats desexed over a period of a couple of months. These are all completely unsocialized cats that you can't handle, but he loves the cats and looks after them, provides them with everything they need, and they're beautiful, healthy cats as well. But desexing them was just something he wasn't going to be able to do. Transport, trapping, the cost, it was all just too many barriers. Parramatta is very different again. So Parramatta is a very urban council area in the middle of Sydney. It's got a population of over 200,000 people. It's very densely populated. So we've got over 3,000 people per square kilometre. And we have, again, lots of multi-cat sites. So these are mainly semi-owned cats, but also some unowned cats as well. But even with the unowned cats, because this is such an urban area, there are always somebody's feeding them, usually lots of people feeding the cats. So we've just started the program in Parramatta, but again, it's another one where the council rangers have really been key to targeting the program. So I'll tell you about this one site because it seems to be in each instance we've got just a couple of multi-cat sites that are producing kittens enough for the whole community. And often these sites have existed for a really long time and been a headache for councils and our RSPCA inspectors for many years, even decades. This is an example in Dundas Valley in Parramatta, where there's probably about 40 cats living around this little shopping complex and apartment block, and in the bush reserve next door, all being fed primarily by this one gentleman living in a housing commission block next door. So this is a guy in his 70s. He's English is his second language, very socially isolated, and has been caring for these cats for decades. Actually, caring for the cats has meant that he's more socially isolated because it's led to conflict with his neighbours. His neighbours have all stopped talking to him because they're so upset about the cats and they're, going to the toilet in their front yards and all of that. But that one guy, that's where the cat started from, but he is definitely not the only one who cares about and is caring for these cats. So you can see here 2 cats on the roof of the pizza shop. This is a cat in the bush where someone's actually set up a little feeding station for them, who's not the guy, the main guy. So someone's feeding them in the bush as well. The pizza shop's putting out pasta for them every evening. So this is where they're getting fed in the car park as well. So this is one of our council rangers who we're working with to try and trap these cats. So what we did is we talked to the gentleman in the who's the main carer of the cats, and he was really keen to get the cats desexed and was really relieved and grateful to have the support because he really loves the cats, but is also exhausted from looking after them and from having the constant conflict with his neighbours. We've also got the pizza shop on side. So this first guy is happy to have all the cats microchipped in his name and commit to being their owner going forward, which is really amazing. The pizza shop also were happy for us to desex the cats. We letterbox dropped around the apartment block to make sure that everyone knows what's going on in case there are other people who care about the cats. So really important that we're working with all the stakeholders in this area because there are multiple people involved in caring for these cats. Also lots of people who don't like the cats. So trying to get everyone on the same page that we're doing a long-term program trying to control this population into the future. So we're now equipped to desex these completely unsocialized cats in our RSPCA hospital and have been desexing them with great success, working through gradually with the help of the council. So that was 2 examples of our programs. We've got lots more as well. So again, I'd encourage you to check out our website and please get in touch if you have any feedback or if you'd like any more information.
That was awesome. Thank you very much, Gemma. So much info there. Just a lot of content to cover, lots of questions. And actually, I've got a couple, so I'm going to jump in with one, or not so much a question, but a comment, particularly about that Parramatta situation. The lack of legislation that you guys have got in terms of cat management legislation with situations like that would actually be beneficial, because it's not so easy to go and just, you know, help this gentleman to sex all of these cats that he's happy to continue to care for. If you've got cat management legislation, you know, that generally puts another barrier in place. Would you agree with that? Or, I mean, how can those with cat management legislation get around those issues and deal with it in the same sort of way, which is really the most effective way to deal with it?
Can you just clarify what you mean about the cat management legislation that would be a barrier?
Yeah, so for example, here in Victoria, owned cats need to be microchipped and generally desexed, depending on which council they're in, but they need to be microchipped and registered to an owner. So obviously that gentleman, A, is not going to get a permit to have 40 cats, and he's not going to be able to afford to, you know, microchip and register them all and have that as a recurring annual cost. So how do we work around those issues with those states that do have this cat management legislation in place?
Yeah, it's a real issue. I mean, it's an issue here too. In New South Wales, all cats are required to be microchipped and registered. We have lifetime registration, so it's just a one-off. We also have this ridiculous annual permit for cats that are not desexed. So that registration and that annual permit fee are a huge barrier for people, which is why it's so important that we're working with the council on this project. So, I mean, Parramatta Council is a council that have had an automatic system in place where anyone who microchips a cat automatically goes into the system to be followed up with a letter saying they need to register, and if they don't register them, then they'll automatically get fined. Okay. So I guess one win with this program is we've worked with the council to take him out of that system and to make a system where people can be removed from that automatic follow-up system, because he's fantastic. Presumably not going to pay his registration fees for those 40 cats, and really he's doing community service by taking them on. So yes, that's a big barrier for us. This program is a bit different to TNR, trap, neuter, release. Obviously, if we're just releasing the cats, that would be can be in breach of our prevention of cruelty to animals legislation, as abandonment of those cats. So we're not abandoning any cats. These are all going back as owned cats. But also, because they're free roaming, unsocialized cats, it can be hard to tell whose cat it is. Yeah. Which is why we've had to involve everybody, the whole neighbourhood has to know what we're doing. Like, we're trapping cats, we're desexing them. If we've trapped them and they don't have a microchip, they're going to get desexed and we'll put them back again. We're going to be ear tipping as well, so everybody can see, oh, this is a cat that's been done. But yeah, I think that's why the whole community has to be involved with these cats. We've got to get everyone on the same page.
And I think with that transparency becomes trust as well. The people can clearly see what's happening, and there's nothing happening behind closed doors, like everyone's involved, you know, all that sort of thing. No, that's great. Thank you. So Amanda has asked, I have had inside only cats for many years and acknowledged the benefits. However, I'm acutely aware of the associated decline in cat welfare, particularly in their mental health, which in turn can contribute to developing medical problems of confined cats. Scratching posts are not trees, and cats require multiple opportunities for active play to reduce diseases such as obesity, for example. People often unknowingly create a stressful environment for cats. How do you think this can be addressed in a meaningful way for cats that enhances rather than reduce their welfare and associated problems that often contribute to relinquishment?
Yeah, it's a really, really, really good point that we're very aware of, and is part of the reason why with our messaging we're really conscious of not saying keep your cats indoors. We know that outdoor access can be very enriching and beneficial for cats. It's all about keeping cats safe, trying to keep them off the road, prevent them from roaming away from home. Because we know there's lots of different ways you can do that without necessarily keeping them completely indoors. We're also, through our campaign, trying to equip people with all the information about what a cat needs. Like, they need vertical space, they need opportunities to scratch, they need opportunities for predatory play, all these things that people are not necessarily aware of. So we're all about cat welfare. We're trying to make cats' lives better. So yes, very conscious of that, and that is definitely something we're trying to get the message out about, what cats need and how those needs can be met in ways that also keep cats safe.
So all those resources are on the website, that, yeah, the Keeping Cats Safe at Home website.
Handouts, I'm quite proud of them. Our handouts on enrichments and what cats need in particular.
Great.
I'd actually really love feedback. So if you want to check them out and let us know what you think, and if we need to expand that series, yeah, please get in touch.
Well, it sounds like a good invitation, Amanda. So jump on the website and take a look. Steve from Burundara asks if the impact of COVID, was it considered as part of the reason for the drop in intake from 2020 to 2022?
Yeah, it was. So we looked at our overall shelter intake, and it actually went up that year. It went down from the LGA that we were targeting, and it went down from the suburbs that we were targeting, but everywhere else it stayed the same or went up. So we're pretty confident that that was actually an impact of our program and not related to COVID.
Okay. And you may have covered this and I missed the point, but is transport being offered as part of the package, you know, to enable the cats to get to the surface?
Transport is a huge barrier for people, especially for these cats that we really want to get. Transport and trapping, because they're often not socialized cats. So we're trying where we can to facilitate transport, which is why it's been so helpful to be working with council rangers, because they can often facilitate those two things. Where we don't have council rangers that can assist with transport, we're trying to tee that up with other, like working with rehoming organisations or trying to work with other local services, because we know that's a huge barrier for people. So where we can, we're trying to facilitate transport assistance as well.
Fantastic. Emma asks if the project with information about keeping cats inside being put on the RSPCA Victoria social media as well. Are there also similar programs in Victoria?
There is the Safe Cats, Safe Wildlife program in Victoria, which is actually, we've got a lot of inspiration and a lot of information from that program. We really appreciate their help with our campaign as well. So yes, I would think so. All our assets, we're really keen to share them. So if you'd like to get on board our campaigns with Keeping Cats Safe at Home, just let us know and we'll add you to our list to send you all the assets. And so you can put things on your own social medias or share it with other people who are interested. We're really keen to share resources in that way.
Fantastic. Question, besides in-house vets, how often or to what extent do you have to stretch resources to engage local/external vets when there's an influx?
Most of these programs are being run through external local vets because we've only got limited vet capacity at RSPCA. We have a hospital in Sydney. We have one in the Hunter and one in Broken Hill, and that's it. So all the other areas we're working with local vets. Shire, for example, we're working with Lachlan Valley vets, and they've been absolutely amazing. They've just desexed 100 cats for us in 3 months, even though they're only in the Shire 1 day a week. In Walgett, we're working with Northwest vets, who have been just amazing at supporting the community. We're working with vets all over the place, so mainly not RSPCA vets.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Gemma, I'm going to get you to pop your email contact address perhaps in the chat, and also just ask you before I forget, could you send me a copy of the presentation and make sure that that's got your contact details on it as well, if that's okay. And a few questions from Sandra. may have missed it, and you may be able to answer for me. What point are you at with the 4-year program? When did it commence?
The program officially started the beginning of, what are we up to, 2021. So we're just coming up to the halfway point. The first 12 months was all our baseline research. So we've kind of only just kicked off with the actual implementation in the last 6 months. So another 2 full calendar years to go.
Okay. And is RSPCA Victoria considering the same program?
So again, they've got their own Safe Cat, Safe Wildlife program, which I'm not sure
it's a slightly different focus. Yeah, I mean, I think that where the funding source for the New South Wales program has come under sort of a different stream, hasn't it? So with a slightly different focus.
Yeah, this funding came from the New South Wales Government through their environmental trust. And hopefully we'll be able to get more funding. We're trying to advocate for more funding for cat desexing from the New South Wales Government, because I think that's the real gap. But yeah, I guess have to take that up with your own state governments.
Yes, absolutely. And was the desexing program funded entirely by RSPCA New South Wales, or did councils / state government contribute?
It's all this is all funding from the state government. So councils have chipped in as well to the programs with their own funding. And we're contributing our in-kind from RSPCA, but this is a government funded project.
Okay, yeah, that's fantastic. Massive opportunity. Just going back to one of the other points about engagement and getting community members not only on board but actually aware of the situation. I'm wondering what experience you have with reaching out to or dealing with community leaders or elders within specific communities, perhaps communities where English is a second language. Did you utilise that as part of your strategy at all?
Yeah, we're trying as much as possible to make these programs in each of the council areas very place-based, very focused on the local community. So we spent a lot of time right at the beginning in our consultation, trying to identify all the stakeholders and get everybody's input into what we needed to do. So Walgett's probably a good example where they have a large Aboriginal community. So we've tried to work as much as we can with the community to see what they want and to try and work with the elders groups and with the community to deliver those services. So like a few weeks ago, we went out to Walgett and we were offering extra cat desexing, going out to people's houses, talking to people, picking cats up and dropping them home. So you're doing lots of engagement and working with the elders group as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important, not only to facilitate that information stream, but also if it's an approved activity or something that's supported by community leaders, then I think it's more likely to be acceptable to the whole community, isn't it? Because as you say, there's so much of a social aspect to all of these cat ownership and management issues. All right, we're past 1 o'clock and we've pinched heaps of Gemma's time. Fantastic questions, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gemma, for being involved and for presenting for us today. And thanks everybody for coming along. Stay tuned to our social media pages and e-news for announcement about future webinars in this series. And if you ever think of a subject you would like covered or a speaker you would like to see present, please email through those suggestions or contact us with those suggestions. Yes, Amanda, I think Gemma has put her email address in the chat above, and we'll also put that in the presentation, which will be up on the AIM website soon with the recording, so you can share that with your team as well. So thanks very much again, everybody. Thanks so much, Gemma. Continue doing awesome work. We're really keen to see how this all looks again in another 12 months.
Thanks, Noel.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.